I never expected my father's second marriage to lead to this level of entitlement, but here we are. I'm James, 35, and I own a successful tech consulting firm in Seattle. 5 years ago, I purchased a beautiful property with a main house and a guest house in the suburbs. The guest house was a perfect setup for my home office and a place for visiting clients to stay. My father remarried 3 years ago to Catherine, a widow with 3 teenage children. Initially, everything seemed fine. Catherine was polite, if a bit distant, and her kids were typical teenagers absorbed in their phones and not particularly interested in getting to know their new stepbrother who was twice their age. The problem started when Catherine's oldest, Michael 19, got accepted to a local university. During a family dinner at my father's house, Catherine cleared her throat and made what she thought was a perfectly reasonable announcement. James, since Michael will be attending university near your place, we've decided he'll be moving into your guest house. It's perfect since you only use it for work anyway. I nearly choked on my wine. Excuse me, well, it makes perfect sense, she continued, as if she were explaining something obvious to a child. That guest house has been sitting there mostly empty. Michael needs a place to stay during college, and you have all that extra space. Plus, it'll save us a fortune in housing costs. My father sat quietly, examining his plate with sudden intense interest. Classic dad avoiding conflict at all costs. Catherine, I said carefully. I use that guest house as my office and for visiting clients. It's not just sitting empty. Oh, but you have that big main house, she waved dismissively. You can easily move your office there. Michael needs his own space for studying. Actually, I can't. I specifically bought this property because the separate guest house gives me a professional space to meet clients and maintain work-life boundaries. Catherine's pleasant expression tightened slightly. James, I'm sure you understand that family needs to come first. Michael is your stepbrother now. Step or not, I barely know Michael. And more importantly, this isn't about family, Mike. It's about my property and my business. I can't believe you're being so selfish. Catherine's voice rose. We're not asking for much. Just a tiny guest house that you barely use. My father finally looked up. Katie, maybe we should discuss other options. No, David, she cut him off. James needs to understand that he's part of this family now. Michael will be moving in next month. That's final. I stood up, placing my napkin on the table. Actually, it's not final at all. The guest house is my property and I'm saying no. This isn't up for discussion. How dare you speak to me that way? Catherine's face flushed red. I'm your stepmother. You're my father's wife. I corrected her. And that doesn't give you any authority over my property decisions. I left shortly after, ignoring Catherine's angry calls behind me. My father sent me a text later that evening. She's just trying to look out for her kids. Please consider it. I didn't respond. I thought that would be the end of it, but I severely underestimated Catherine's determination. A week later, I arrived home from a business trip to find a moving truck in my driveway. Catherine was directing two movers who were carrying furniture toward my guest house. Michael trailed behind them with boxes. What the hell is going on? I demanded, jumping out of my car. Oh good, you're home, Catherine smiled as if nothing was wrong. We're just getting Michael settled in. I have your spare key from your father. My blood pressure skyrocketed. Stop the movers right now. Dad had no right to give you that key, and you have no right to be here. Don't be ridiculous, she scoffed. We already discussed this. Michael needs the space. We discussed nothing. I explicitly said no. This is breaking and entering. It's not breaking and entering when we have a key. Michael piped up, smirking. Besides, you're never even here during the day. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. I'm calling the police. You all need to leave immediately. Catherine's eyes widened. You wouldn't dare call the police on family. Watch me, I replied, putting the phone to my ear. What followed was a scene I'm sure the neighbors talked about for months. Catherine screaming about family loyalty while the police escorted her off my property. Michael sulking as the movers reloaded his furniture. My father calling repeatedly, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails about keeping the peace. I changed all my locks that evening and installed a security system with cameras. I had a feeling this wasn't over. I was right. The next morning, I woke to dozens of missed calls and text messages from family members. Catherine had been busy overnight, posting a tear-filled video on Facebook about how her heartless stepson had called the police on her poor college student son, leaving him homeless. My Aunt Susan called to berate me. "How could you do this to family? That poor boy needs a place to stay." "He has a place to stay," I replied, "with his mother in their house 20 minutes from campus. But the commute would be so hard on him. You have all that extra space." It went on like this for days. Various relatives calling to explain why I should give up my guest house, how family should share, how I was being selfish. Catherine had apparently spent years cultivating the image of a perfect mother, and people were quick to take her side. Then came the escalation. I was in a client meeting when my security system pinged. Catherine was at my gate, this time with all 3 kids, and what looked like a month's worth of luggage. I watched through the camera as she used a credit card to fiddle with the gate lock. I excused myself from the meeting and called the police again. By the time they arrived, Catherine had managed to get the gate open and was directing her kids to unpack the car. "Oh, thank goodness you're here," she called to the approaching officers. "I need help getting my kids settled into their new home. My stepson is being difficult about sharing." The officers weren't amused. "Ma'am, did the homeowner give you permission to be here?" "He's my stepson," she repeated, as if that explained everything. "This is a family matter." "No, it's a trespassing matter," one officer corrected her. "The homeowner has already filed a complaint. You need to leave immediately." "But these are my children," Catherine wailed, gesturing dramatically. "He's leaving them homeless." "Your children have a home," I said, having arrived during this exchange. "The same home they've always had. This is my property and you're trespassing." The officers gave Catherine a choice: leave voluntarily, or be arrested. She left, but not before declaring that I would regret this betrayal of family. I went straight to my lawyer's office. Michael had a lot to say about it on social media. Rich stepbrother would rather have empty house than help family. His post got hundreds of sympathetic comments, mostly from people who didn't know the whole story. Catherine's campaign escalated. She started showing up at my office, telling my employees about how cruel I was to my poor young siblings. She contacted my clients, spinning stories about how I abandoned my family. She even went to my neighborhood association, claiming I was running an illegal business from my guest house. The final straw came when I returned from a weekend away, to find that Catherine had somehow gotten another key, apparently copying it before returning the original, and moved all 3 kids into my guest house while I was gone. This time, I didn't just call the police. I had them arrested for breaking and entering. Catherine spent a night in jail before my father posted bail. Dad finally found his voice. After that, he showed up at my office the next day, looking exhausted. "You had her arrested," he said, slumping into a chair. "Yes, I did. After multiple warnings and 2 previous police interventions. She's your stepmother, James." "No, Dad, she's your wife, and she's been trying to steal my property and damage my business." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "I know she can be overwhelming, but she means well. She just wants to provide for her kids. By taking what isn't hers, by harassing me and my employees, by trying to damage my reputation with clients. That's not meaning well, Dad. That's entitled and possibly criminal behavior." "Criminal? That's a bit harsh, is it? She's broken into my property twice, attempted to move people in without permission, and tried to interfere with my business. What would you call it?" He was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to stand up to your wife. Tell her to stop this insanity before she faces serious legal consequences. I've already filed for a restraining order." "A restraining order?" His head snapped up. "Against family. Against people who are harassing me and threatening my property and livelihood. The fact that you're married to one of them doesn't change what they're doing." Dad left looking troubled. That evening, he called to tell me Catherine was very hurt by my actions and wanted to have a family meeting to work things out. I agreed to meet, but not at my house. We gathered at a neutral location, a private room at a local restaurant. Catherine brought all 3 kids. My lawyer brought documentation of all the incidents so far. Catherine started with her usual approach: "We're just trying to keep the family together and help the children." My lawyer interrupted smoothly: "Mrs. Anderson, we have documented multiple instances of breaking and entering, attempted theft, harassment, and interference with business relationships. My client has been more than patient, but this stops now. How dare you bring a lawyer to a family meeting? Catherine gasped. This stopped being just a family matter when you started breaking laws. I replied, here's what's going to happen. You will stay away from my property. You will stop contacting my employees and clients. You will remove all social media posts about me and this situation. If you don't, we'll proceed with criminal charges and civil suits. You can't be serious, she sputtered. David, are you going to let him threaten me like this? My father looked older than I'd ever seen him. Katie, you broke into his house. Twice. You tried to move the kids in without permission. You've been harassing his business. What did you expect? Catherine burst into tears. Michael started yelling about family loyalty. The younger kids looked uncomfortable. My lawyer slid papers across the table. This is the restraining order paperwork. We can file it today. Or you can agree to stop this behavior immediately. Your choice. Catherine signed the agreement to stop harassment. She didn't have much choice. The evidence against her was overwhelming. But as we left the restaurant, she hissed, this isn't over. Family takes care of family. No, I replied. Family respects boundaries, something you clearly never learned. The aftermath was messy. Catherine launched a whisper campaign in the family, painting me as a heartless monster who left his siblings homeless. Some relatives took her side, others saw through it. My father was caught in the middle, trying desperately to keep peace while failing to stand up to his wife. Michael ended up commuting to college from home, like thousands of other students do every day. Catherine's younger kids stopped speaking to me, which was no great loss since I barely knew them anyway. My father's calls became less frequent, always tinged with unspoken reproach. But my guest house remained my guest house. My business continued to thrive, and I learned a valuable lesson about standing firm against entitled behavior, even when it comes wrapped in claims of family. The relative calm lasted exactly 3 months. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, I received an unexpected visit from my father. He looked haggard, clutching a manila envelope like a lifeline. We need to talk, he said, settling into my office chair. Catherine's filing for divorce. I waited, sensing there was more. She's claiming part ownership of your property in the settlement. What? I nearly dropped my coffee. How could she possibly claim that? He opened the envelope, pulling out legal documents. She's arguing that since we've been married for 3 years, and I helped you with the down payment, she has a community property claim through me. I'd forgotten about Dad's help with the down payment, a generous gift he'd given me before meeting Catherine. I'd insisted on documenting it as a gift rather than a loan, specifically to avoid any future complications. It's ridiculous, I said. Your gift was before the marriage, and it was properly documented. She has no claim. I know that, he sighed. But she's found a lawyer willing to pursue it. She's also claiming emotional distress from your harassment of her children. My harassment? I couldn't help laughing. That's rich, coming from her. James, his voice was tired. She's asking for $500,000 in damages. The absurdity of the situation hit me full force. Let me guess. Almost exactly what a year of college housing would cost for 3 kids. She's desperate, Dad admitted. The divorce, it's my fault. I finally stood up to her about the way she's been treating you, and she didn't take it well. I studied my father's face, seeing the guilt and worry etched there. Dad, her behavior is not your fault. I enabled it, he said quietly. I let her push and push, thinking it would keep the peace. But after that meeting with your lawyer, I started seeing things differently. Started noticing patterns. What kind of patterns? He shifted uncomfortably. She's done this before, with her first husband's family. I found out she tried to claim part ownership of his parents' vacation home during their divorce. She has a way of targeting property she thinks she deserves. I called my lawyer immediately. While Dad's gift was properly documented, we needed to prepare for Catherine's legal attack. As we discussed strategy, more revelations about Catherine's past emerged. Her first marriage had ended amid similar accusations of property manipulation and boundary violations. She tried to move her children into her then brother-in-law's rental property without permission, claiming family rights. She'd attempted to take over her first mother-in-law's guest cottage, using nearly identical arguments about wasted space and family needs. She's a professional victim, my lawyer explained. She uses her children as sympathy pawns and manipulates family connections for financial gain. But she's never successfully won any of these claims. Still, the lawsuit meant depositions. Catherine's lawyer questioned me for hours about my relationship with my step-siblings, trying to establish some sort of promise or obligation regarding the guest house. Did you ever indicate to Michael that he could stay in the guest house? No. Did you ever discuss college housing arrangements with your step-siblings? No, but you have a large property with extra space, correct? I have a property that I use for my business. Yes, and you refuse to share this space with family members in need. I refuse to let people move into my property without permission. Yes. Round and round it went. Catherine's lawyer tried to paint me as a wealthy, selfish stepbrother denying help to struggling college students. My lawyer countered with documentation of Catherine's pattern of property claims and the police reports from her break-ins. The depositions took an unexpected turn when Michael was questioned. Under oath, he admitted that Catherine had planned the whole thing from the start. Mom said James had too much space for one person, he testified. She said once we established residency in the guest house, it would be harder for him to kick us out. She had it all planned. First me for college, then the younger kids would visit all the time, and eventually we'd just sort of take over the space. Catherine was furious when the testimony leaked back to her. She showed up at my office again, this time in tears. How could you do this to me? She sobbed. I'm about to be divorced. My children need stability, and you're fighting me over a stupid guest house. Catherine, I said firmly, this was never about the guest house. This is about your sense of entitlement and your inability to respect boundaries. Boundaries. She spat the word. I'm trying to take care of my children, by teaching them it's okay to take what isn't theirs, by showing them that manipulation and lawsuits are how you get what you want. She straightened up, tears magically disappearing. You'll regret this. The judge will see what kind of person you really are. Yes, I agreed they will. The judge saw exactly what kind of person Catherine was. Her lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, and she was ordered to pay my legal fees. The emotional distress claim was thrown out based on the evidence of her own harassment. But the real surprise came during the divorce proceedings. Dad finally found his backbone. I'm not fighting about assets, he told me. She can have what she wants from our marriage. But I'm done enabling her schemes. Catherine didn't get anything related to my property, but she did walk away from the divorce with a decent settlement. Dad seemed relieved rather than bitter. I should have seen it sooner, he said over dinner after the divorce was final. The way she always had some plan to get more, some claim on other people's property. I thought I was supporting a loving mother, but I was just funding a con artist. Michael reached out to me a few months later, after he'd had time to reflect. I'm sorry, he said simply. Mom always made it seem normal. Pushing boundaries, taking what we wanted, but watching all this go down. I don't want to be that kind of person. He'd moved into regular student housing, taken out loans like most college students, and was starting to understand the value of earning things rather than taking them. Catherine's younger kids still wouldn't speak to me, too firmly under their mother's influence. But that was okay. Some boundaries are better left in place. The family dynamic shifted permanently. Those who had supported Catherine's schemes gradually realized they'd been manipulated. Those who had seen through her from the start felt vindicated. Dad began rebuilding relationships that had been strained by his wife's behavior. My guest house remained my office and client space, but it came to represent something more. A symbol of standing firm against entitled behavior, even when it wears the mask of family obligation. You know what the funny thing is? Dad said during one of our now regular dinners. If she'd just asked nicely and respected your answer, you probably would have helped her kids with college some other way. He was right. I would have. But that was never really what Catherine wanted. She wanted control, ownership, the right to take what others had built. Instead, she lost everything she tried to manipulate. The security cameras stayed up, and the new locks remained unchanged. Some lessons you only need to learn once. A year after the lawsuit, I received an unexpected email from Catherine's first husband, Robert. He'd heard about the legal battle through mutual acquaintances and wanted to meet. We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Robert was a tired-looking man in his 50s, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "I should have warned you," he began without preamble. "When I heard she'd married your father, I should have reached out. Maybe I could have prevented all this." "Why didn't you?" He stirred his coffee slowly. "Shame mostly. I felt like a fool for not seeing her patterns earlier. And honestly, who would have believed me? Catherine is very good at what she does." Over the next hour, Robert shared a history that eerily paralleled recent events. Catherine had systematically targeted his family's properties, always using the children as leverage. His parents' vacation home, his sister's rental property, even his grandfather's farm. She always started the same way, he explained, talking about wasted space, family obligations, how the kids needed it more than the current owners. Then came the guilt trips, the tears, the accusations of family betrayal. Finally, the legal threats. Did she ever succeed? Once he admitted, "My sister gave in, let them use her rental house. Took 2 years and an eviction notice to get them out. The property was trashed. I thought about my guest house, grateful for my security system." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because it's not over," he said gravely. "Catherine never really lets go of a property she's targeted, she's just regrouping." As if his words were prophetic, the next phase began a week later. First came the sympathy campaign. Catherine had apparently joined several local community groups, presenting herself as a divorced mother struggling to provide educational opportunities for her children. She never mentioned me by name, but her posts always referenced a wealthy relative who was hoarding space while young students struggled. Then came the protests. Small groups of her supporters began gathering near my gate, holding signs about family responsibility and student housing justice. Local news picked up the story, though thankfully most coverage was skeptical of Catherine's claims. The real trouble started when some of her more zealous supporters began harassing my clients. They would follow visitors to my guest house, confronting them about supporting family separation and enabling housing inequality. I had to hire security to escort clients and eventually installed a second gate with camera verification for visitors. Then Michael called with a warning. "Mom's found some activist groups," he said, sounding worried. "She's trying to get them to pressure you about housing inequality and family wealth distribution." She's not well, James. The divorce broke something in her. "Are you still in contact with her?" He hesitated. "Sometimes, she keeps trying to convince me to file my own lawsuit against you. Claims I have residency rights because of that week we stayed there. I've told her no, but she's working on Tommy and Sarah now. They're younger, more easily influenced. She's convincing them they have some kind of inheritance claim through Grandpa's gift to you." My younger step-siblings, Tommy 16 and Sarah 14, had been fully indoctrinated into Catherine's worldview. The thought of them being manipulated into legal action turned my stomach. I called my father immediately. "I know," he said heavily. "I'm trying to get custody modified. Her behavior's becoming more erratic. The kids spend every other weekend with me, and I can see how she's poisoning them. Can you do anything legally?" My lawyer's building a case. She's missed some psychiatric evaluations that were part of the divorce settlement. And there's evidence she's using the kids for financial manipulation, which violates several court orders. The situation came to a head during a particularly hot summer week. Catherine had organized her largest protest yet, with about 50 people gathering outside my property. They had signs, megaphones, and a clear plan to disrupt my business. What they didn't expect was Robert showing up. Catherine's first husband walked calmly into the middle of the protest and began telling his story. He had documentation, photos, court records, testimony from his family members. He painted a clear picture of Catherine's pattern of property manipulation and using children as pawns. The protesters, many of whom were genuine housing activists, began to realize they'd been manipulated. Catherine's carefully crafted image of a struggling mother fighting for her children's future crumbled as Robert revealed the truth. She doesn't care about housing justice, he concluded. She cares about taking what others have built. Ask yourselves, how many of her previous property claims actually benefited her children? The protest dissolved within hours. Catherine, who had been orchestrating everything from a distance, went silent on social media. A week later, my father won emergency custody of Tommy and Sarah. The psychiatric evaluation Catherine had been avoiding revealed serious issues with reality perception and compulsive behavior around property acquisition. The doctor called it property fixation disorder. Dad explained. Apparently, it's a form of obsessive behavior where someone becomes fixated on acquiring specific properties, usually with some personal or family connection. They convince themselves they have a right to these properties and build elaborate justifications. Michael, now in his second year of college and living in regular student housing, began attending family therapy with Dad and his siblings. Slowly, they started to understand how their mother's behavior had shaped their view of family relationships and property rights. I found Mom's journals, he told me during a rare visit. She had this whole plan mapped out. First your guest house, then Dad's condo, eventually even Grand's lake house. She saw every family property as rightfully hers, just waiting to be claimed. Catherine was ordered into intensive therapy as a condition of supervised visitation with her younger children. The last I heard, she'd moved in with her sister in Oregon, far from the properties she'd become obsessed with. The guest house stood unchanged through all of this, still serving its original purpose as my office and client space. But now it represented something more, a testament to maintaining boundaries and refusing to enable destructive behavior, even when it comes disguised as family need. Dad spent more time with all three of his stepchildren, trying to help them develop healthier perspectives on family relationships and personal property. Tommy and Sarah slowly began to emerge from their mother's influence, though they remained cautious around me. They're learning, Dad said during one of our regular dinners. Learning that love doesn't mean taking, that family doesn't mean unlimited access to others' resources. It's a hard lesson, but a necessary one. Looking back, the whole experience taught me something valuable about the intersection of family and boundaries. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for family is maintain firm limits, even when it feels harsh. Sometimes saying no is more supportive than giving in to harmful demands. The security cameras stayed up, but they rarely caught anything more exciting than delivery drivers and legitimate clients these days. The guest house remained my space, used as intended, a symbol of standing firm against entitled behavior, disguised as family obligation. 3 years after the protests ended, I stood in my guest house office, preparing for a unique meeting. Michael had graduated college and wanted to discuss a business proposal. He'd specifically asked to meet in the space that had once caused so much conflict. It feels different now, he said, looking around. I used to see this place as something that was unfairly kept from us. Now I see it for what it is. Your workspace, your investment, your boundary. He'd grown into a thoughtful young man, far removed from the entitled teenager who tried to move in uninvited. His business proposal was Solid, a student housing consulting firm, helping match college students with legitimate affordable housing options. I learned from our mistakes, he explained. There are real housing issues facing students, but the solution isn't forcing your way into other people's properties. It's about finding legitimate options and respecting boundaries. I agreed to be an initial investor, with clear contracts and boundaries in place. Michael insisted on everything being properly documented. A far cry from the family should share mentality his mother had instilled. Tommy and Sarah, now 19 and 17, had also evolved. Living primarily with Dad had given them a chance to develop healthier perspectives. Tommy was starting community college, commuting from Dad's house and working part-time. Sarah was researching universities, but with realistic expectations about housing. Mom called last week. Tommy told me during a family dinner. She wanted to know if I'd consider claiming partial ownership of your property once I turned 21. Something about inherited family rights. I told her no. Catherine had completed her court-ordered therapy, but continued to struggle with property fixation. She'd attempted similar claims on her sister's house in Oregon, leading to another family rift. But her influence over her children had diminished significantly. Dad had found unexpected peace in his post-Catherine life. I spent 3 years walking on eggshells, he reflected, trying to balance her demands against everyone else's rights. Never realized how exhausting that was until it stopped. The guest house had become something of a family legend. The property that sparked a revolution in how we understood boundaries and entitlement. Relatives who'd initially sided with Catherine now used it as a cautionary tale about enabling toxic behavior. Last month, I hosted a small gathering in the guest house. Its first purely social use in years. Michael, Tommy, Sarah, Dad, and a few supportive relatives came together to celebrate Michael's business launch. Remember when Mom said this space was being wasted? Sarah mused, looking around at the comfortable office setup and client meeting area. She never understood that something being used differently than she wanted didn't mean it was being wasted. She never understood a lot of things, Michael added. Like how taking something doesn't make it yours, or how destroying relationships costs more than any property is worth. We'd all learned valuable lessons about boundaries, about entitlement, about the difference between genuine family support and toxic enabling, about standing firm even when it feels easier to give in. The security cameras still record, the gates still require verification, and the locks remain unchanged. Not from fear anymore, but as a reminder that healthy boundaries make healthy relationships possible. Catherine occasionally still makes noise about family property rights, but her words find few sympathetic ears these days. Her children have grown beyond her influence, learning to build their own lives rather than trying to take pieces of others. The guest house stands as it always has, serving its intended purpose, but now it's also a symbol of something larger. A testament to the power of maintaining boundaries, even when it's difficult. A reminder that sometimes the best way to help family is to say no to harmful demands. You know what's ironic? Dad said during our latest dinner. If Catherine had respected boundaries from the start, she'd still have a family willing to help her. Instead, she lost everything trying to take what wasn't hers. Looking out at my property today, I see more than just buildings and boundaries. I see the results of standing firm against entitlement, of maintaining principles despite pressure, of helping family by refusing to enable destructive behavior. The guest house remains my office, my client space, my boundary. But it's also become a reminder that true family support isn't about taking what others have built. It's about helping each other build our own success, while respecting the boundaries that make healthy relationships possible. The end.